Hello. Welcome to episode 109 of the Carrier's Edge podcast. I am Mark Morrell, co-founder of Carrier's Edge, and joined today by
Jane Jazarawi, the other co-founder of Carrier's Edge.
And as always, as soon as I hit record and got this thing started, I immediately had to have a large yawn, and I'm fighting a cough. Never fails.
Okay, well, because you made me yawn. I saw that yawn, and I started yawning.
Now we're going to be making the audience yawn. So you're all welcome.
There's nothing like energy.
Nothing like energy.
We're very energized.
Well, it's more...
Damn it, now I'm yawning again.
More psychological than anything else. It's not that we're sleepy, but you are all in a deep sleep.
Well, we've been up for a long time.
Yes.
So we're doing this at 7:20 Eastern. And
is it really that late?
Yeah, it's 3:20. No, 6:20 Eastern.
Okay.
So
yes, and it's that time of year where it starts to get dark early, and you never really know when the day is actually happening. So
yeah,
it is. Yes,
and it seems to be dark all the time. We're getting into that dark all the time.
That first couple of weeks after the time change happens, after the fallback, it is always tricky to get used to it, and then by January, it's just normal, and you get excited by the longer days.
Yeah, transitions are harder than the actual end point, which I think is kind of a theme, because I think all transitions are harder. And if you if you look at, the U.S. election has just happened, and now we're in a transition where nobody knows what actually is going to happen.
Right.
We can only, we're only all sort of like, okay, is he going to do this? Is he not going to do this? What's going to happen? And that's more stressful. And when you make a change, or you say that you're going to make a change, that period from when you say you're going to make the change and then the time that the change is complete, I think that's the highest stress for people.
Yes.
The actual change itself is not.
Yeah, once you get used to the new normal, and once you're settled in with the new process or whatever it happens to be, it isn't that bad. It's shifting.
It's the shift.
And it's also the fact that you're shifting from old to new. If you were starting from scratch and just went to the new, it'd be way easier. But having to transition from a way of doing things or an older system to a newer system, newer way of doing things, that's where all the stress comes up for sure.
Yeah, it's the grooves in your brain when you're trying to remake the grooves in your brain that you've created, because they're the things that your brain does unconsciously because they're shortcuts. Yes. And your brain is very lazy.
Yes.
So you make up all kinds of shortcuts, and you don't realize the shortcuts that you've built up until someone tells you, oh, you can't do that anymore. So I was telling you that. Another example of that is what I was telling you earlier about how you can create a text field in Illustrator. There's two ways. There's the quick way, where everybody's brain grooves are situated in that. And then there's the way that's actually better, that nobody does,
until you tell them to do it.
Until you say, no, do it that way. So there's two ways. You can either click with your cursor or click with your mouse right into whatever you're working on, and a text field will show up. Or you can draw a box. Now that seems like a really simple, why wouldn't you draw the box all the time? Because it's way easier to just point and click.
Yeah, just click and type.
And that's what people do.
Yeah.
Because if you couldn't do that, that would be an issue, but that's not the best way to do it. So I have now made everybody's life and creative that much worse. By saying, no, please draw the box.
Well, process changes are challenging, which is why there's an entire industry, an entire discipline around change management.
Yeah, because you literally have grooves in your brain that develop, and you develop habits that you don't want to think about. Or you don't want to have to. Your brain doesn't want to expend energy thinking.
Yeah. Well, and you will subconsciously just fall back into old habits if they're not, if the new ones are not completely ingrained. So we're going through some internal changes, reorganizing some things and changing some processes. And one of the things I said early on is we need new names for all of these things. You can't give it the same name and a different process, or say that it's the same same thing, but with just a different set of steps, because people will just fall back into doing the old things that they have been.
They'll fall back into their brain groove.
Yeah, they're in a groove already. So you have to give it a new name. You have to make it very clear that it is different. The old way is dead. Long live the new way.
Yeah,
that kind of thing. So it is tricky, but it's worth it for sure to go through those hassles and get those new processes figured out.
And best practices change. Mm-hmm. So, your entire working life is going to be a process of changing the brain grooves. And if you don't kind of elasticize your brain enough that you can deal with it, then it's going to be very difficult for you, because changes are coming. There's lots of changes are coming.
Change is here, and it is not going to slow down. It's getting faster all the time.
It's not just technology, and I know you're thinking about technology changing, but it's people's responses to each other in the world. We had a very interesting, every time we have a staff meeting, we have an existential question, which we may have mentioned on this podcast before, but the existential question was about, could you not lie? I can't remember what the actual question was.
Could you have a normal life without lying?
Yeah.
It includes white lies and think of the children.
And like the Santa Claus.
And if you were also not lying, or could you be considered a good person without lying?
So one of the things that I was thinking about that with that question, and we didn't really talk about it because we only got like a few minutes to talk about it in our groups. But what it kind of led me down was why do we lie? Mm-hmm. And do other species lie? Oh, is this something that is unique to humans? And why did we evolve this way? And I think my suspicion, and I don't know if I'm correct, because I think I have read something about this somewhere, is that humans lying is like an evolution of something. And there must be some benefit to, well, I think there is. Actually, now that I'm talking about it, there's definitely, benefit to lying, because if you lie effectively, you can get more things.
Well, and also it can be very advantageous for your adversaries to have the wrong impression about things.
Right. And if you can try and trick someone into not eating you or not killing you or, giving you more food or
animals
whatever.
Animals lie. Animals set up traps, and
animals lie?
They do. They will have a ruse where they try and look like something that they're not, or pretend to be something that they're not. But
oh yeah.
I was reading a story on the weekend about what it really means when people talk about playing possum, and what a possum really does when they play dead. They don't just lie still. They drool and they excrete and they twitch in particular ways, and their pulse effectively disappears. Like, they really go all out. So they look really like they're dead, and they are completely lying about it.
Oh yeah, I guess that's true. See, this is where I would have gone if we'd had another 10 minutes to talk about this concept. But, well,
in my group, I was pointing out that there are some people who definitely don't lie, who are brutally honest. And once you get to know that and you're used to it, you can deal with them. But when you don't know what you're dealing with, it can be rough.
Who?
Basically, people on the autism spectrum.
Oh, well.
my fellow ASD people. There are often people that are very honest because they're told when they're young, don't lie. And so they take that literally. They don't lie. And now they have to be taught that, well, what we really mean is don't lie like this, but lie this other way is fine. And a lie that helps somebody is okay.
So lying is really it's a social norm that you have to learn how to, and some people learn it and can perfect it and are just so good at using the truth and lies and mixing them up so that they're very difficult to kind of separate. And I am not a big fan of lying. I am not a big fan of dishonesty, but I can see how it's advantageous for people. Yeah, I would prefer to say nothing rather than have to tell a lie. But that doesn't mean that I'm not dishonest in whatever ways. I'm sure you can list off a whole bunch of ways that I am.
I think one of the challenges of living and working with you is your blatant honesty and your lack of lying, and how much you think everything that is slightly dishonest is a lie.
I was talking in my group about how you're like, that's not a lie. And I'm like, yes, it is.
Yes.
Lying is in the eye of the beholder.
Yes. I don't even remember what we started off talking about.
Oh, I took it in a completely different direction.
Well, we have lots of things to update on.
Yes.
And these are all truths. These are not lies. All truthful things to update on. And I'm going to start with where we were a few weeks ago. When last we met in this little recording studio, we were talking about the Fleet Safety Council annual conference and how we were looking forward to going to it. And there was a session there that you really liked and thought was quite excellent. And I wanted to talk about that because I didn't get to that session. I got wrapped up in something else. But tell us all about this session that you attended.
Well, let me first say that the Fleet Safety Council is really fun for me. It was really fun. We got to see a lot of people we hadn't seen for a long time and to catch up. I may possibly get to Ontario a little more than I originally thought, just because I wouldn't mind being in Ontario for a couple of things. But this particular session was about driver orientation, like the training that is done when someone, or onboarding. It was more about onboarding. And it was a panel with Steve Newton from Challenger, Shelley Walker from the Women's Trucking Federation of Canada, and, I can't remember her name because I don't know her. A driver from
a fleet?
She was from a fleet, but I'm pretty sure that she was a member of the WTFC.
Okay.
So, sorry, no, I was thinking of the acronym of, did I say it right? So
Yes, WTFC.
Anyway, so it was about what is good, what is bad. It's about mentorship. It was about things that to watch out for when you are doing onboarding with people. And I think Steve was funny because he was talking about, he was a truck driver in his previous life. And he said that, I nearly didn't have a career in trucking after my first run because he didn't know what he was doing. He had to go across the border, had to do a delivery cross border, and his company did not give him any indication of anything at all. And he ended up having some difficulties parking and just not having a good time and was ready to throw in the towel.
Oh, I'm feeling very anxious for him just hearing that.
Yeah, he did not enjoy it. And so he told this story and basically I think that Challenger has made a very good, like that isn't going to happen at Challenger. If you're a driver for Challenger, that's not happening. And then Shelley was talking about, the different obstacles that people face. And the woman who is a driver whose name I can't remember was talking about how difficult it is still difficult to be a woman. And actually it's not necessarily just being a woman, but to be a person who doesn't really know what they're doing and asking for help and not getting help, like actively being told you should know it, you should suck it up. That suck it up comment I think was really interesting because it was the kind of idea that, you want to be a truck driver. These are all the terrible things that are going to happen to you when you have to suck it up. And I think Shelley and Steve were making the point that, no, you don't have to do it that way. Yeah. That's not a prerequisite for trucking. It doesn't have to be a crappy job. You can make it a non-crappy job. And that was why I really liked it, is that they were talking about, they weren't sugarcoating it. And that's really important. If you sugarcoat the job and say, oh, it's the greatest thing, it's the greatest industry, it's the greatest blah, 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 it's the greatest company, you're not doing yourself any favors.
No, you're not helping anybody with that.
No, you're just doing the little la, la, la dance. And what you have to do is say, okay, what are the challenges and what are we going to do to mitigate these challenges? And that's what Stephen and this is what the panel was talking about, was mitigating the actual challenges that happen when people are entry-level drivers, which is one of the things that we try to do during Best Fleets is try to not sugarcoat or make everything in trucking seem great, but really try and say, okay, this is an issue. Our questions are issues. We know that every single question is an issue. It's either a legal issue, it's an operational issue, it's a human resource issue. It's an issue that a driver faces. So, okay, company, what are you doing about this issue? And if you say NA or we don't do anything, well, there's a hole there where a driver can be frustrated and want to quit because it's too hard or they don't feel like they get any support. The other part of that panel was talking about mentorship and the importance of a good mentor and how effective mentorships can really last outside of the onboarding process, which I think mentorship is hugely important and that there isn't enough of it anywhere. It's hard to do the pairing up. It's hard to have if you have a good mentor, you're lucky.
Yeah, absolutely. If you have a good mentor, you're lucky. And that's also something that people are challenged by because they want to have mentoring programs, but they don't know necessarily what constitutes a good mentor and how to build that skill set within their senior drivers. And it's one of those things where everybody knows a good mentor when they see one. But if I say, okay, write down what the qualities are, you end up with a lot of very vague things that are very difficult to screen for and difficult to train people towards. So it's a challenge of its own, building a successful mentoring program and identifying the candidates where their gaps are and what you're going to do about it and making sure that it is executed consistently.
And it's not just driving. I mean, I think mentorship, period, is one of those things that you can have lots of programs, but I don't know how effective they are if you aren't really thoughtful about what you're doing with them. Mm-hmm. I don't want to, because we were talking about setting up a mentorship program at Carrier's Edge, and part of me is like, I don't know. I don't know how that would actually, I don't know what that would look like. What does that mean? And I'm happy to do it. I assume that someone wants me for a mentor. I think that one of the things that I try to do is give people mentorship kind of, off the cuff all the time. But that's not really a mentorship program.
No. Well, I think we're starting small with the team leads who are kind of in that position where their job description includes mentoring others.
Yeah.
And so Shelby has got documentation of best practices and ways to do it and things to watch for. So she's gone through the effort of building that thing out. But it is a challenge for everybody. We're lucky that we have somebody who has experience building those kind of programs and has a real interest in it. But fleets who are in the business of getting freight delivered may not have anybody with that skill set in-house, and it can be tricky. Again, how do you get from the idea of wanting one to a place where it's up and running smoothly? Well, you've got change management, you've got process development that needs to happen, you've got a lot of trial and error, and it gets to be tricky.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of happened, Shelby's mentorship project kind of happened, I think, in the summer.
Yeah.
So we haven't even followed up on her with that. And we probably should. I just don't know how we're going to do that in Best Fleets at the same time.
Yes. Well, that is a wonderful seg to pivot to the topic of Best Fleets. His interviews are now up and running.
Mm-hmm.
We finished.
And you have completed the first one.
Completed the first
Yay!
one. And what's noteworthy, since the last episode of this podcast, the nomination period closed. And I was very surprised to see that nominations are up this year. I really thought they were going to be down from last year with the economy continuing to struggle. Although apparently FreightWaves has told us that the recession is now over, so life is good again. We'll see how that plays out. But we ended up with nominations up a bit.
Things have turned around a little bit, and I think that's why. I think the last couple of months have been brighter than they have been, and I think that might be why.
Absolutely. Yes. So I was very happy to see that the nominations are up a little bit, and a bunch of people that are in there for the first time. We always like to see some new blood in there, and some people that are participating that were sort of on the outside of the program and maybe been nominated in the past and hadn't done anything, or people that came to our conference last spring and then got nominated and are going through the process. So it's really good to see. I'm always very happy to see it expanding that way and moving beyond the kind of traditional participants and moving out into the LTL world and different types of fleets, tanker fleets and things like that. So I'm very happy about that. And yes, I did my first interview, or the first interview. Once again, the first interview of the season was Nussbaum Transportation, who I haven't actually interviewed for several years, I don't think.
I know, because I've been doing that first interview with them.
Yeah, they're eager to be the first. And so they were joking about, there's all pressure on them. And I said, no, the pressure's on me. I got to remember how to do one of these things. I haven't been thinking about it that much, but it is also a good opportunity for us to bring the whole team in to kind of listen in and review what's involved and how the whole thing works and the kind of questions that we ask and the vibe of the whole interview. Except that Nussbaum is actually not a great fleet to do that with, I realized, because they've been in the program for over a decade now. They are very precise with their answers. So they provide a lot of good information very cleanly, and it's nicely formatted. So I don't end up having a lot of follow-ups. We were done in 40 minutes because it's so clear. I know what they're doing. I can see what it is and what they're changing, the new things that they've done this year. So it was a bit of a good introduction just to kind of remember how it all works and for people to get reminded of that. But I think it would be just as valuable for people to sit in on an interview with a first-timer. Because the first time people go through the process, they're never really sure, even though we give them a lot of guidance on what to include and what not to include, they still take some time. Those interviews are longer. There's a lot of things that we all have to sort of go through together when a fleet is participating for the first time. So we'll have a few of those. We've got a handful of them scheduled for this week already. So people are getting rolling.
It's crazy how many.
Yeah, usually when we send out the announcements about getting your interviews booked, we do see a bunch of interviews booked pretty shortly, but they're all for like the final week. Everybody wants to claim like the later spots.
But not this time. Next week is pretty full.
Yeah.
Which is unusual.
Well, I think we're going to end up doing probably more interviews. Not only will we have more nominees, and I should clarify, we have one more nominee than last year, which I wasn't expecting. I thought it was going to be less. So one more counts as a big deal for me. But it's not like we've got 50 more than we had last time. But I think we probably will do more interviews. Last year, I think we did 72 interviews. We had 72 fleets that went through the interview phase. And I think we'll probably be a little higher. My guess is we're going to be 75 or 76 this year. So that'll be a little bit higher. And based on the energy level of the participants and how eager they are to get going, I think a higher number of those or higher percentage are going to be making it through to the finals as well, which means it's going to be more fleets that we have to score in what is going to be a compressed scoring period. So that will factor into episodes of this over the next couple of months, because for sure I'm going to be stressing about it. And as we know, I love to take out my stresses through the podcast. So we will be hearing about it, but
directly through the podcast and indirectly through me.
Yes. But it's getting rolling. So it's,
it is happening. And we have new nominated graphics.
Yes.
Which I really like. They're a lot cleaner than what we had before. We solved the problem of the transparent Best Fleets logo, and I think they look really good. So if you've been nominated, you should make sure you get your nominated logo. I know there's a message that I have mail where someone is saying, I didn't get our nominated logo. So I will, I have to respond to that.
And the interviewed images and logos will start going out this week too.
Those are being updated as well. So funnily enough, like last year or the last few years that we've done this, so what we do is we take a screenshot of the interview of the Zoom interface with all the people's pictures on it. And then we slap an interviewed logo on top of it. And last year, it was on a white background. And this year, it's going to be on a dark background. It's going to be on blue. And Kat, the graphic artist who did this, did a gray version, a kind of purpley version, and a blue version. And she showed this to me this morning, and I went, oh. And I was thinking about Nussbaum, and I'm thinking, can you do a red one?
Yeah. You know they're going to ask.
I know. It's going to be, they're going to ask. So I figure, like, changing background color is not a big deal. So I said, do a red one and an orange one. I think that's it, because we have blue, purple, orange, and red. That should be most trucking company. Oh, and a green one.
Yeah.
And I think that'll cover it. So we can sort of match the color of the background color to the color palette of whatever fleet it is, which would be a nice touch. Hopefully they don't.
Seems great when you first have the idea, but after Kat has to do 60 of them, we'll see what she thinks.
No, she's just going to do, like, she's just picking an orange. She's not like picking, she's picking a red. She's not picking Nussbaum red.
Okay, I see.
But like, if Nussbaum has the choice between a blue or a green background and a red background, they'll ask for a red background.
Sure.
So
okay.
She did 3. I figured, you can do some more.
Okay.
So that's, so we talked about it. It's crazy the stuff you have to plan for. And I'm already anticipating that people are going to want custom things.
And you know who those people are.
Yeah, I know.
We won't mention your names on this thing, but we know who you are, that you're going to be asking for custom things.
Yeah, I remember the MC, it started with the Motor Carrier Service back in the day when John Fritzis was like, can we have a 5-year logo?
Yeah.
We're like, oh, I guess. Sure.
Yeah.
I can make that.
Now it's exploded into
40 billion logos.
Yeah. Crazy.
And a week-long process that happens every year to make sure that everybody gets the right set of logos. Now it's a set of logos. It's not one logo.
Well, we're getting ahead of ourselves. We're just starting interviews. We're just getting the driver survey.
Oh, no,
we've
created logos. Yeah. We know.
But we haven't distributed them yet. We have to get through interviews, driver surveys, scoring.
Well, we have to have a winner. Like, we have to have winners. The logos for the winners have been created, much like, a Best Fleets logo for this many consecutive years. We know that somebody is going to need one. Or maybe not. I don't know. But, you make 40 other ones. You may as well make that one. And, okay, so here's another thing that I have to deal with is that now we have a lot of stuff in French for Best Fleets.
Yes.
And there is a Best Fleets logo that a French version of the logo, but it's not great because Fleets is what's in red because the way it's les flottes.
Les plus en vue or something.
The plus en vue. No, yeah, I don't remember what the actual French phrase is, but it was made to sort of fit the square. And it makes it so that Fleets is what's in red instead of best. So Marie, our translation specialist, did a version where it's more comparable to the English. So I'm like, now I have to do that too. And
the multi-year version. And
only if someone who, now I'm tired. Now I'm going to yawn.
Yes, the can of worms is opened.
And you would not. Graphics is really important in trucking. I mean, it's a very visual industry. You don't think so, but what's like I was on the radio this morning on Sirius XM on the Mark Willis show talking about Veterans Day, which is like Remembrance Day for us, but in the States it's a Memorial Day or Veterans Day.
Veterans Day, yes.
Isn't it Memorial Day?
No, that's in May.
Oh, okay. So, all right. Yeah, you're right. Getting my American holidays mixed up. I thought it was Remembrance Day there, too, for the longest time. I think it was only the last couple of years. I was like, oh, yeah, it's not the same. But we were talking about it, and we were talking about the different ways that people who've been in the service are recognized in companies, in fleets, and it's all very visual. So it's, decals for your truck that sort of represent your service or the branch of the military that you were in, to truck wraps, to Wreaths Across America, which is a huge a huge thing, very visual. You're putting wreaths on all of the cemeteries in Arlington. It's very, very visual, and symbolism is very important in the trucking industry, I think.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
From what from my experience with them in the last 15 years, I think if you can visualize something, if you can produce a visualization of something, that it's very effective.
Yeah.
If you do it well, it can be very effective in the industry.
Yeah, I think the messaging behind graphics is very important. Yeah, and is
that's why I like you, because that's
regarded.
what I do.
Yes, no, that's good. So I'm going to be interested in seeing what comes in. Already, my first interview, I saw some cool things that I'm definitely going to be talking about in podcasts and presentations down the road. So I think it'll be another interesting year. And the driver survey as well. When we start getting those in, we changed a few things. We added some questions. So I'm always curious to see what we get for input on those new questions.
Should we talk about the questions?
The driver survey questions?
Yeah.
Do you remember which ones we changed?
We added a question about lease.
We did add a question about lease purchase programs.
Yeah. Do you remember the other one?
Something about pets.
Oh, yeah. We asked about, do you find how valuable, it was one of the, how valuable do you find this?
Yeah.
And pets on the truck is one of them. The lease op question, we wanted to get people's sense of how fair they think the lease purchase system is. Because the industry has been, well, not the industry, but
there's been controversy over it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see what drivers have to say about that. The pet thing is interesting because it's really grown in the past few years. And I was mentioning that when we were doing the interview today about the number of fleets that are adding kind of dog runs or some sort of fenced area for people to have their dogs, and way more drivers taking dogs with them than there used to be.
Do you think so? Do you think that
I think post-COVID, I'm seeing way more of that. Way more fleets doing stuff. Because when we first started, you would have a few fleets that had done some things, and then it sort of settled, and there wasn't really much of it for a few years. And then post-COVID, it's really boomed. A lot of people are doing the dog kennel or the fenced area for a run, and providing more support for drivers that take dogs with them. So I'm definitely seeing more of that.
Well, I think it's also helpful if you have a lot of women drivers, because women, if you're a solo driver, you're going to feel safer if you have an animal with you.
Yeah, I think it's also a mental health thing that people want, companionship.
Yep.
So very interesting.
And I think that's kind of happened in the world at large. I mean, the number of pets, I don't know about where we live, if it's always been like that, but there's more dogs than children.
Yeah, I think that may be part of being right in the downtown area.
Oh, it's crazy how many dogs there are here, though. Yeah. And yeah, just the number of dogs that you see now, and the people bringing animals on planes, which it's like skyrocketing compared to what it used to be.
Taking them to the shopping mall. Yeah, pushing them around in the stroller. Yeah.
Oh, the pushing around in the stroller, it kills me. There's a lot of people who have dogs in strollers here in Victoria, but also the whole practice of letting dogs, not just service dogs, but having dogs in like Canadian Tire. Canadian Tire is basically a
hardware store. Well,
is it a hardware? It's
kind of an everything store.
Yeah, it started to be a hardware store, and now they have other things. So it's kind of like Home Depot / Walmart-y. It's kind of weird that way. Canadian Tire, if you haven't been to a Canadian Tire, it's a good store to go to. It's a little bizarre. But the Canadian Tire, remember when they first opened it, the one where we used to live, the one by our house, and they had the dog, they basically had a dog, like a dog bowl right at the front and saying your dogs are welcome here. And I thought that was so bizarre. I was like, why? Okay, I guess they're letting dogs into stores now.
Yeah, and now it's everywhere.
Yeah, now it's normal. And that was, I guess that was 2020, 2019, 2020.
Yeah, something like that. But yeah, definitely a growth in the amount of pets that are being supported by fleets.
Yeah.
So we will see what we get what we get in all of the data when we put it all together, but becoming another trend that emerges. And related to this, something else that is starting to shape up very nicely is our planning for a conference, which we are putting the agenda together. I've got some guest speakers booked, which I won't disclose right now, but I've got some, and I got some ideas for some others. It's going to be a really good program. The sessions, I'm starting to put together the broad strokes of what we want to cover there. And we won't know exactly what the details are going to be until we have all the data, but we know sort of the broader area of what we want to talk about. And we've been doing some work on the stage design and lighting, which is my favorite part of all of that. What can we do with the stage decoration, the props, the lighting? What can we do to make it look cool? We've already got this 65-foot wide TV or giant screen, but what can we do underneath it and with the light show on the actual stage itself? So I am continuing to work on that. So a lot of pieces coming together, and we will talk more about those in future episodes for sure. So last thing that I think we can talk about a little bit here, what we have coming up tomorrow, is our monthly webinar. And I know we talked about this a little bit a few episodes back, the idea of the history of learning management, because that's kind of our theme for tomorrow is inside learning management and looking in a little bit more detail at the guts of a learning management system and why it matters. Most people think about e-learning and they just think about the courses, they think about the catalog of different titles, but it's the management system behind that that is just as important, which I'm biased because that's the part of the business that I provide, and I think it is just as important as the content. And I've said in the past that people sign up to our service for the course catalog, but they stick around for the learning management because we have to make it easy for people to run reports, to manage their assignments, to automate anything that they can. And so kind of I'm surprised that it took us this long to actually do a webinar where we talk about it, like where learning management systems came from. One of the things that I realized just when setting up here that I want to talk about is the differences between learning management for white collar versus blue collar versus post-secondary. Very different approaches, and they all evolved in different ways for different reasons, and it's important to have the right kind. Right? A blue-collar learning management system is really what you need for drivers, not something for post-secondary, not something for white-collar people. And vice versa as well. If you have a bunch of white-collar people and you put a post-secondary learning management system in, it ain't going to go well. So we'll talk about that, but that's kind of as much as I've thought about it. You've been doing some work, doing a little bit of research on it and putting some ideas together. But have you found, well, you mentioned in the previous episode about how our sort of alma mater in tech companies, SoftArc was actually one of the first commercial learning management systems, which I didn't realize. Makes sense, but
I don't think it was. I don't think that they thought of themselves as a learning management system.
It didn't have a name. The first one that I remember being called a learning management system was Saba back in 1999, but that was 5 years after Open University.
Well, Open University, like they were just using a system.
Yeah,
they were just using a communication system that they could deliver content over. They weren't thinking about, we need a learning management system. They were thinking, what is going to allow us to post content for people in, certain areas, allow people to have, real life chats. So synchronous, there was a lot of talk about synchronous and asynchronous. And when the system, the first class allowed Open University to have synchronous chats, which was unusual at the time. Like you could post messages to forums back then but you couldn't have like an ongoing chat. And that was something that first class did. But you could also, so the chat would be good for, a prof giving, a student guidance or answering questions or anything like that. You could also have a group chat, which was a group live chat, which is, like Facebook Live or something like that. You didn't have
Well, it's like a live texting that people do now all the time and take for granted. But
in the 90s, in the mid 90s,
that was
unheard of. Exactly. So like I said, they weren't thinking about that. They just wanted the features and liked the features and used those features. And what's interesting is that it was created in concert with a school district. So this was the Scarborough Board of Education, which is the east end of Toronto. And they were the ones who worked with the owners and architects of SoftArc to make what they wanted. They wanted a communication system, and this is what they wanted. I don't know where they got the money for it. At this time, Scarborough was its own city, and they had a lot of computers. They were using computers quite a bit. So they wanted to kind of take it to the next level and have this communication system. And so it was email, but it was also what was called groupware, which you could send messages to a folder or to a channel. They weren't called channels at the time; they were folders, or called conferences. And you could communicate that way. You could communicate through a chat. You could, like a public chat or a private chat. So it was all of these different ways that people communicate within an educational setting. And so it makes sense that it was the foundation of a learning management system, which is basically the electronic version of administration of an educational institution.
Makes sense. Yep.
So I think that we can talk about that. We can talk about the different types, because there are different types of educational institutions as well. You have a university or college type setting where people are going in as students and are going to go through curriculum. And so, but that curriculum they're doing it voluntarily.
Yeah.
And then you have sort of blue collar regulatory system where you have to take classes or you have to do certain content. And then you have the white collar version where you can choose. You have a lot more freedom, where people might be doing it to get a better job or to get a certification or something like that, which doesn't exist in trucking yet.
No.
Really.
No. Whole different approach to education.
Yeah. And the way that you, like you said, the way that you manage your users, the way that you manage your certifications, like all of these different things that you associate with education are going to be different depending of the type of institution and the type of program that you're going through.
This is great. You're doing the whole thing for me. This is good. You're doing all the work for me here.
Well, you said those three things, and I'm like, yeah, of course.
Yeah. And there's more to it for each of those. But yeah, those are the kind of the areas that I want to talk about in the things to watch for and sort of the pros and cons of different approaches. So we got a lot that we'll go through. Yep.
Sounds like a plan.
Yeah, good. And we don't really have time to go into new courses and things, but I will say quickly that we're very happy to have the Owner-Operator Business Skills course out finally.
Yay!
That's been it's been in the works for a while. A lot of research, a lot of interviewing people and collecting best practices, and really making something that I think is quite awesome. So that's going to be great for both Canadian and U.S.-based owner-operators or drivers that are considering becoming owner-operators, or small fleet people who really never learned it properly, which is a lot of them. And I think that's something that we saw with the other owner-op course as well, is that we had a lot of fleet people that were taking it because they didn't really know those pieces very well. So it's very good for them to learn that as well. So very happy to see that out there. And I think with that, we can probably wrap it up for today.
Sounds good.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
Have a great day.